the global pharmaceutical industry and careers in pharmaceutical management. We have multiple keynote speakers who will be sharing their expertise and insights, and we encourage you to engage throughout the session by placing your questions in the Q&A box that you can see at the bottom of your screen. Before we begin, we have a brief housekeeping note. Keep in mind that we'll have a dedicated Q&A session a couple minutes just around the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, do feel free to type them in the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen and not in the chat. Before we begin, I'd just like to ask you for 2 or 3 minutes of your time to fill out a short poll that should be appearing on your screen now. This will help us to get to know you better, where you're joining from, your background, and your interests. So hopefully you can see the questions on your screen now. Please take a couple of minutes to answer what is appearing in front of you. All right, so far about a quarter of you have answered. We've got 12 answers so far. Okay, now about a third of you have answered. Let's say 33% of you are mid-career professionals. About 40% of you are either very familiar or somewhat familiar with the full pharmaceutical value chain, from discovery to market access. Over a majority of you are part of the pharmaceutical ecosystems. And most of you, around 67% of you, think CEOs value work experience most when hiring. Around 59% of you are confident about entering or advancing in the pharmaceutical sector, so that's indeed quite encouraging. On that note, with over 60% of answers, we'll be ending our poll, and I will be having the great pleasure of introducing our first speaker. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Sami Ogunjimi. He's a visionary entrepreneur and a healthcare industry leader, widely recognized for transforming healthcare delivery across Africa through innovation, strategic leadership, and deep sector expertise. He is the founder and group managing director, CEO of Codex Group, a Pan-African health tech and pharmaceutical organization headquartered in Lagos, Nigeria, with operations in over a dozen countries. With more than 2 decades of experience spanning global pharmaceutical markets and local healthcare ecosystems, Sami began his career in the United Kingdom after earning a Master of Science in Analytical Chemistry from the University of Greenwich and serving in senior commercial roles at leading multinationals, including Merck Pharmaceuticals. We also have Professor Paul Lalvani, who will be our other keynote speaker. He's a dear friend of UNITAR, and it's always a pleasure hosting and welcoming him to our webinars. Professor Lalvani is a former UN diplomat and the founder and executive director of the Empower Group, which is a global organization specializing in institutional and human resources capacity building. Operating in over 40 countries, Empower School of Health has supported more than 500,000 professionals through digital solutions. Professor Lalvani has over 25 years of experience working across both developed and developing countries with health and humanitarian organizations, including the Global Fund and the World Health Organization. He has advised board members, health ministers, and heads of state on strategy, vision, and impact. Beyond the boardrooms, he spent years on the ground navigating the dusty roads and last-mile clinics of Kabul, Port Moresby, Sokoto, and Sana'a. Organizations that Professor Lalvani has supported through Empower includes Ministries of Health in over 30 countries, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, President Kufuor's Foundation in Ghana, the Global Fund, George Soros's Open Society Institute, and various UN agencies, including the WHO, UNFPA, UNICEF, and UNAIDS. So Professor Lalvani, I believe you're the first speaker, so please feel free to take the floor.
So you're on mute.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I just remind myself. So first I wanted to thank Daniel for the wonderful introduction and as I said, I'll try and shorten the introduction next time so we can jump to the matter. And I'm really excited here to have with us the founder and group managing director of Codex, and a close friend of Empower School of Health, Sami Ogunjimi. And we'll talk more about him. And actually, I really want the audience to learn as much as possible from someone such as him. And I know the time that I've spent with him in his offices and the work that he's done across the country and the continent is really outstanding. And so before we begin, the way I've structured this is give you a short introduction about molecules to markets, basically the pharmaceutical sector. And then once we go into the pharmaceutical sector, we'll stop, pause, and go through the life journey of Sami in a brief way. So next slide, please. So you should, yeah, go ahead. Go to the next slide. Okay. So the pharmaceutical sector is growing. Pharmaceutical, diagnostic, healthcare sector. And I'll say diagnostics as well, because Sami is both from the pharmaceutical and the diagnostic space. And you'll hear on both sides. And as we do more of these webinars, you'll hear about pharmaceuticals, devices, diagnostics, and others in different webinars. So, but to give you a sense, the industry that we're in is always continuously growing and changing. While there are some that are being massively impacted by AI and jobs are being lost, the pharmaceutical industry, the growth is accelerating. The needs are accelerating. And this is no matter which part of the world you're in. This is what's unique. They're growing at anywhere from the developed countries, 6 to 7%, and the emerging countries, 7 to 8%, when in most cases, the GDP of countries is anywhere from 2 to 3%. So the pharma industry, if you ever decide to enter it, or if you're already in it, it's a great sector to be in. Next. And you'll be getting all these slides, so don't worry about the details. And this is also being recorded. You can replay this for yourself later as well. The African pharmaceutical market, one of the more early emerging markets in terms of where it is today, is growing even more rapidly. So if you happen to be on the African continent, great sector to be in, and we'll dive in deeper as well, given the continental vision about focusing on local manufacturing and production. Next. Go ahead, next. So what's really exciting for the continent, and this discussion has been going on for the last 15 to 20 years, but really accelerated post-COVID for obvious reasons, bring local manufacturing, national and continental sovereignty, self-sustainability, jobs and economic growth. All of this is possible, but we can take it even further. Next. Africa and Asia. Asia has been exporting pharmaceuticals for the longest time. If we go back to, I'm originally from India. I grew up there for the first decade. And then the next decade, I'd spent time in Nigeria, where I spent, and my family's still there, by the way. And then most of my education and work experience has been in US and Europe. What's fascinating is going back before 1980s, no one believed that besides the developed countries, Europe, US, Japan, anyone else could make pharmaceuticals. Then China and India completely turned the tables around and became self-sustainable from 1980s till 2000. And they continue to grow and scale. And they are major exporters now. Africa's vision is not just self-sustainability, but even to become a net exporter of health commodities. And there are several countries in Africa that are now exporting as well. Next. Examples of countries they're exporting. This is just the Africa example. Asia has plenty more. Vehicles, textiles, pharmaceuticals is still embryonic, growing. It's small, but it's going to grow. Next. But all of this needs workforce talent, competency, and certified, right? So we'll talk more about that later on, and we'll ask the CEO over here about his experiences of the kinds of people that he's often looking for. Next. Overall, what does the pharmaceutical value chain look like? I won't make this into an academic session. I want this to be an experiential session, but just a few slides. These are the areas. If you're looking for jobs, if you're looking to work, depending on your background, interests, skills, if you come from the management side, you can work in market dynamics and access. If you come from engineering, you can go into manufacturing. If you're in pharmacy and you have a pharmacy background, you could do any of the discovery research, clinical development, regulatory affairs, medical doctors and nurses, same thing, clinical development and discovery and research. So vast, and of course, if you have IT skills, you can work across anywhere. And it really is a fantastic sector where people often think pharmaceutical sector, I need to be a pharmacist. Yes, but not only. Probably no more than, I would say, 40% are pharmacists and the rest are non-pharmacists. Next. So keep your mind open. Discovery and research. This is where the new products, and not just innovative new products, and not just pharmaceuticals, diagnostics also are needed here. So a lot of R&D is done there. And often it's not for new molecules, but new formulations. If a product goes off patent, all the generic companies can start to manufacture it now. But you need the skill sets. You need to do, if not clinical trials, you need to do bioequivalence and bioavailability studies. This is where R&D or formulation and development come into play. Next. Clinical trials, really important all the way from phase 1 to phase 4. Fantastic area of growth, and especially in the developing countries. Costs of doing this range anywhere from 100 million, especially depending on once you get to phase 3, it's minimum $100 million to $500 million. So everyone's looking for efficiencies. Everyone's looking for new places to get the clinical trials done. And more importantly, because of the variation in pharmacogenomics, how each person reacts to a proper medication, they do all these clinical trials in multiple countries, multiple regions of the world to get a really good sample. Next. Regulatory affairs. This is on both sides. Industry needs really strong regulatory affairs folks. And most of these people come from the pharmacy background. But so does the regulatory agencies. You have, in the US, you have the FDA. In Europe, you have EMA. WHO has a great support system for working with countries based out of both all the regions, but of course, especially headquarters. And now, most recently, the official launch of the African Medicines Agency, 20 years in planning. And this will be based in Kigali, Rwanda, has just kicked off, where the goal is, while there are individual regulatory authorities for each country, why not create a continental one as well? And the advantage of that is it helps accelerate access, accelerates registration, makes it easier for manufacturers to register a really good product and make it available rapidly to save lives. And then there are country-specific. NAFDAC is Nigeria, Rwanda, FDA is Rwanda, etc. So remember, you've got an option of working both for the regulatory agencies, government, and also for companies that would need this support. Next. Manufacturing and quality assurance, absolutely vital, from GMP to engineering to plant operations to engineering operations. And here, pharmacists to engineers to quality assurance people, everybody's needed on the shop floor for manufacturing. And not everything takes a long time. The challenge often here is it's not just the education you need, but you need hands-on experience as well. And we'll talk more about that. Next. Market dynamics and access. What does that mean? We talked about the science, then there's the business and the management side, the pricing, the patents, the generics, going from patented products to generics, public versus private procurement or sales, global versus local manufacturing, all of those elements. How do we take a really good life-saving product and make sure that it's available to the individual? That's more on the science of management, which is what comes in over here. So if you have a management background, this is where you ought to be. Next. And with that short intro, because I'm sure many of you already know about the sector, let me, he's already been introduced officially, but let me also then expand. I first heard about Sami through the Nigerian government on one side, and then his name was again repeated during the pharmaceutical manufacturers group meeting where I met him in Nigeria, and then I met him in Ghana. And he's really a leader, an absolute leader in this space. He's created something from absolutely nothing. Nigeria, you go back about 20 years, had only multinational companies who were there. Some were manufacturing, some were importing and trading. Local production was minimal. Everybody was focused on pharmaceuticals. Sami looked at the strategic market and decided that he was going to focus on diagnostics and make sure there's a play with pharmaceuticals as well. And I will let him elaborate more on that later on as well. And is there another slide on Sami, or do we go into, yeah, so why don't we, just next slide, just present, just go there. Okay, fine. All right, so why don't we stop sharing so the audience can actually see Sami, and if you can put a spotlight on Sami as well. And I'm going to ask him some simple questions about his experience, okay? So if you spotlight Sami, then you'll only see Sami. And so the first question, Sami, for you is from your early beginnings as a student. You've just graduated. I want you to just roll back a little bit. You've just graduated, your degree, because I also know you have global education as well. Talk about that and the journey to where you are today. And sometimes it's planned and sometimes it's providence. So I'll give you the floor. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much for this platform, and thank you, Prof. Lavani. I think my story, I'm not sure whether it's unique or not. I was a local guy, had my primary, secondary, and university education in Ogun State, Nigeria. I knew that I loved chemistry from secondary school. I ended up having to do industrial chemistry. It was a very new course in my university at the time. And for the first, it was the second set of my university. And the first set only had 6 students doing industrial chemistry. And my set, which was the second one, also had 6 students. And, okay. And I remembered, and my uni then didn't have pharmacy. I actually wanted to do pharmacy, but industrial chemistry was the closest to it. And then I realized in that course how broad this could be, and we were taken through chemical engineering, petrochemicals, pharmaceutical chemistry, metallurgical engineering, geology, all sorts, including economics, product management, and so it was a very good course. So I left the uni, and as always, everyone's looking for a job that pays very well. And I think the first thing that comes out straight at you is the banks, the petroleum companies who are paying a lot more money than your average other sort of companies. And I won a scholarship to do my master's in Nigeria. And I was very particular about what I wanted to do, and not a lot of courses were available that I could do. And so I was offered some courses in organic chemistry. I didn't like it. Anyway, so I had a job to, believe it or not, the first time for any manufacturer or entrepreneur to do POP in Nigeria, plaster of Paris. So I was employed. I was a young graduate, I was in my early 20s. I was 21 when I left uni, and I think I was 22 by the time I finished my youth service. And so I was thrown into this ocean of having to manufacture POP in Nigeria. And during that process, we were selling POPs to people that wanted to make chalks, school writing chalks, POP for ceiling tiles, for sculptures and all that. And the support we had for that particular company was from FIRO, which was a research institute in Lagos, not too far from my factory in Oregun, Ikeja. And I knew a lot of things were wrong because when POP is very simple. You have gypsum, you take water out, and then to use, you put water back in. Okay, so but there are things that are very important, like the rate of reaction, the heat of reaction, and all that. And all that cannot be done manually. Okay, so you need to have a computer system that helps you to set all those things so that you can tailor how you want the product to set. Should be determined by how quickly the water gets taken from the product in the first instance. So that motivated me, and I wanted to do something around analytical chemistry properly, but not just in theory, but to have a situation where I can see it in practice myself. So that took me to Europe, and took a while. Finally, I started doing a course in the University of Greenwich on analytical chemistry. And then I quickly understood all the things that were wrong in my former company that I was working in Nigeria. Because what you find was you will sell the same products to people that are making chalk, and they want things to set as quickly as possible. And then you have these sculptors that want to take their time for it not to set quickly. So those were the sort of challenges that we were having at the time. Anyway, when I was doing my master's in analytical chemistry, I then realized that at that time in the UK, you have to buy a magazine called New Scientist when you're looking for a job. So I wanted to do research. I wanted to do pharma research, R&D, and all that, but it wasn't paying very well. Okay, and I started hearing people going for interviews in pharma sales, and that is sort of interested me because you could have a brand new car. I was young, so I wanted a brand new car and all that, so I had an opportunity to join the pharma industry. So I became a salesman. I wouldn't have thought, because I was quite introverted.
Sorry, just to clarify, this was a salesperson. You're still in the UK right now, right?
So I'm still in the UK. So I became a pharmaceutical sales rep. I did some work with through Johnson & Johnson, and then finally with Merck Pharmaceuticals, where I was a rep for like a year. I then realized I had other things inside of me beyond just laboratory or R&D and stuff, that I can actually market things, I can sell things. So we launched Rabeprazole, a proton pump inhibitor, was brand new. So I was involved in the launch of that across the entire London. And I quickly, I did really well. That was with ASI and Johnson & Johnson, Janssen Cilag at the time. And then after a year, I joined Merck. It was when I was in Merck that I began to understand this is the German Merck, okay? The original Merck. Merck was in the UK at that time really focused more on cardiometabolic care. And so I was a rep for about 1 year with Merck. I became a middle manager, like a regional development manager, we used to call it. And then I became a manager looking after the region of London, the London region, everything inside the M25. And then after a while, I became senior regional manager. But all along, I'll come to Nigeria. I'll visit Nigeria regularly. I had friends in Glaxo at the time that later became GSK. I was kind of curious about how they were doing in Nigeria and what we were doing in the UK. And I realized in the UK, we rarely talk about Nigeria at all. The market was so small that even when there are international meetings, Nigeria would not get invited. Okay? And so Merck decided to merge with Serono of Switzerland. And so they wanted to retain, of course, when there's a merger like that, they want to retain the best people. And so we were being groomed to do some activity, to take some new roles in the UK. But I was more interested in going back to Africa. So when I I wanted to take Merck to Nigeria.
Right.
So so I was asked to go to Lyon in France, because that was where Nigeria market was being managed from. And they told me that they were only looking for a distributor, at that time, because they didn't want to make that sort of investment in Africa. So I decided, instead of being a distributor to the company that I was already working for, I might as well start my own company. So that's where that started from, so we conceived the idea of Codex with a friend of mine who was also in the pharma industry in the UK at the time. And at this period, I wasn't, I was married, had my family in the UK. It wasn't an easy decision for me. But I knew there was something that was pulling me back to Africa. And so my other co-founder at the time, lost interest, that it was only if I could go to Nigeria fully. And I didn't want to do that. And I thought it was something I could do in between. From 2008, we then decided, at that time I left Merck completely. I started a company in the UK and I've invested more in the company in Nigeria. But every time I come to Nigeria, I see more opportunities. And this is a fact. I come to Nigeria, the opportunity wasn't just about money, really, but it's looking at things that we take for granted in the UK that were not available in Nigeria. And I'll give you an example. So we started by launching Glucodix. Makes sense because I was selling glucophage, and I launched the slow release of metformin in the UK as a manager, across the entire country, London region. And so we decided to do the slow release, thinking about compliance and all that, and that if patients are compliant, you get better outcomes, for diabetes. And then realize in the pharma market, most people were focusing on painkillers and were focusing on antibiotics a lot. So I decided to do what I was doing in the UK that I knew, which was cardiometabolic care, first as a drug. But lo and behold, I realized that the biggest problem in Nigeria was diagnostics. There was not effective diagnosis of even the illness itself before you can now decide what sort of products to use, what sort of therapy to give to the patients. I'll give you an example. In Nigeria, there was nothing like HbA1c measurement for patients. Now, in the UK, that would be crazy because you need to have an idea of how much of sugar that has attached itself to the blood over a period of 3 months, glycosylated hemoglobin. And so we decided, okay, we're going to do the blood glucose monitoring machines, but more importantly, we must have the HbA1c launched in Nigeria. Question then was there a guideline for management of diabetes? So every hospital, every state was doing their own thing. There was nothing national that you can say this is the guideline. Now in the UK, in the company that I left, Merck, you don't even start to sell a product without ensuring there's a guideline or protocol in place for everybody to be able to use. So we tried to do the national one with the Diabetes Association of Nigeria. It was a little bit slow, and so we approached Lagos State government, and they supported us. And so we brought in a lot of clinicians together for some period, for a few weeks, for a couple of weeks, and they developed the first guideline for managing diabetes in Nigeria. And the guideline, we then ensured that the guideline included HbA1c measurement. Okay. In addition to that, we ensure that lipid profile, full lipid profile was also included, because most patients that are diabetic or have hypertension usually have dyslipidemia, which is abnormal lipids. So it makes sense to have all that together. Now, the thing about Nigeria is we do a lot of research in Nigeria. So I then stumbled on a lot of research that have been done in Nigeria about dyslipidemia in diabetic patients. But no one, after the research, there was nothing else that was done about it. There was no commercialization of that, so bringing that to benefit the patients after the research has been done.
Right.
So we launched all those sorts of products. And
this is under the Codex brand.
This is under Codex brand. So we launched the products, we helped with the guideline development. And that was the first in Nigeria. So for me, the joy from that honestly, is beyond any income, any money that you can make. Because just to know, and at that time, I had members of my family that were having stroke. A lot of them were diabetic and hypertension, with a lot of hypertension. And people, and you know that the money usually, when there is fun, then there is light shining on, that light gets shone on disease areas. So in Nigeria, it was all about HIV, malaria, TB, and that was it. There was nothing around cardiometabolic care, honestly.
Right. So wait, I'm going to pause you there.
Yes.
Sammy, I'm going to pause you there. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to dig deeper into what you're about to say. This is really good. But let me, for the audience, highlight some of the things that you said and put it in a strategic context, because this is a fantastic story of an individual, of a leader, and how he got there. So if you look at some of the key characteristics of leaders, the first one is always, are you following your passion and interest? And that's what you said. When you said, I wanted to study chemistry, and you go back to your origins, you go, this was something I was interested in. I looked around, where could I study that? Right? So you had that as a starting point. Then while you were working, you were always curious. You highlighted, so curiosity is one of the second traits of a leader. You saw there were inefficiencies. You saw the use cases were very different. Some wanted, the plaster of Paris, something that sealed more quickly, some that needed to seal more slowly. The users were totally different. You saw inefficiencies and product range growth opportunities. So again, the curiosity jumped in there. So the new needs. The third thing you said was, you always wanted to read and learn because it's the only way to grow. You actually invested significantly to move to the UK to do your master's, learn a new skill set, learn new knowledge, and that opened up a bunch of new doors. All right, and most people over there would have been happy. I know so many people from the developing countries. Once they get to UK, they've made it. They will study, they'll get a job, they'll have their family there. They're not coming back. Okay. But what's interesting is, so read, learn, grow. Then you talked about the network. You figured out what others were doing. You connected with them. That's the fourth area of success. And again, we'll come back to all of that for the audience. You networked your way to find jobs with J&J, Eisai, and Merck. And interestingly, by the way, I worked at Eisai in Japan.
Wow.
J&J funded us to do some of our project and work that we've been doing in Africa. This is more recently. And then coming back to, again, you took a major risk. You displaced your family. You came back to a country that could potentially offer less, but you saw real opportunities there. You saw the glass more than half full. You saw it 3/4 full, and you realized if you got it right here back in Nigeria, you could really make a difference. And instead of everyone following pharmaceuticals, which is 95, 98% of the market in Nigeria, again, you looked at something different. All right. So these, and one last thing that you said, success wasn't about making money. Success for you was something bigger than that. Yes, money is important. You have to feed your family. You have to grow your business. But at the same time, what are you doing for the people? What are you doing for the country? What are you doing that does all of it? And there's a wonderful Japanese concept of ikigai, which puts it really nicely. It says, follow what you, so one part is your passion, and you talked about that. If you have passion and you build on that passion your skills, because just because you have passion doesn't mean you'll actually succeed. So on that passion, build your skills. Once you build your skills, can you find a way for it to get funded? Will the world pay for it? It could be a job. It could be something you start yourself. That's great. Now, could you add one last element, which is, could you also do it in a way that helps others on the planet? So passion, skill, financing, and then do good for the world, the Ikigai concept. And you followed all of that. So I'm going to now spend a few minutes on talking about what you're a leader, you're a CEO now. Let's say, what does your typical, and I know there's no typical day, but what would an average day of yours, when do you get up? What do you do? What do you focus on? All right. So in fact, I would say that your day starts the night before because you've already planned your day. That's what CEOs do. So you already know what's good when you hit your desk, what you have planned for the day, and then of course any emergencies on top. Okay. So if you could share with the audience as a CEO, a group managing director of multiple companies, not just one, what does a typical day look like?
As you said, every day is never the same, but I can tell you some things that are very constant though. I'm one of those people that do not believe in procrastination at all. If there's something that needs to be done, it's got to be done now because you have no control what tomorrow holds. Okay, so you should get it done, and definitely tomorrow is going to happen, and you have other challenges tomorrow. So most of the time, I mean, it's like I wake up when it all depends on what I slept with. If I slept with a lot of issues that needs to be resolved, I'm waking up very early to talk to my partners in Asia. Okay, that's very important because I partner a lot with multiple companies in Korea, and so Korea is about 8 or 9 hours ahead of us. Okay, so if I want something done immediately, then I have to wake up and let them do it so that by the time I wake up, I can have the result and I can have what I need to start my day. Okay.
What time do you wake up and what time do you hit the office?
So if I know that I need to talk to them in Korea, I go to bed early and then I wake up. I can wake up in the middle of the night around 2 o'clock, have the conversation I need to have with them and then go back to sleep. And then I wake up at about 6 o'clock. Okay. Yes. By the time I wake up at 6, honestly, I will have had some emails from them providing answers to what I spoke to them about 4 hours before. Okay. Yeah. And of course, I go for my walk. I do my walk in the morning because that allows me to reflect on a lot of things. I do a lot of thinking, things that I've not completely thought about. Doing that 1 hour walk, a lot of things start to fall into place. Okay. So I go back. Mostly I have my quick breakfast, then I get to the office. Getting to the office, I also make sure I live not too far from my house. The office is not too far from my house. Okay. So because of the traffic in Lagos. Right. So I get to the office, and of course, there'll be things to discuss with my top guys. So quickly, we must meet together, share.
So what's your first meeting? Your first meeting is with whom? When you've landed in the office?
My first meeting is usually I have like key people. They're my senior people. So we share. I do not keep things to myself alone, especially certain things that are operational. So I discuss with them and to make sense of some of the things that, if it's new, if it's something that we were working on before, that's also fine. So I have quick meetings with them. And then, of course, you start treating your meals. Sometimes you will not believe that on a daily basis, by 8 o'clock, you probably have almost over 50 meals to treat. And by the time the day finishes, so I'm one guy that likes to clear my inbox.
Okay.
Or before I go home. Okay. So I clear, because if you don't clear the inbox, by the time you come back the following day, you will not be able to do justice to important things that may happen. Yeah. Okay. So just
one second. So the people you meet in the morning, do you meet with the head of manufacturing, the head of marketing? Who do you meet in the morning? Be more precise.
I think because this was before. So now because our plants are not at the head office, so the factories are not at the head office. So I tend to meet more with the executive directors, okay, and sometimes if there's a need to meet with the heads of the plants, so we make sure they come to the office. And one of the things that we really want to do is to have more space. Our head office is no longer big enough so that I can have access to everybody, the heads of all the companies, can do maybe 2 or 3 days at the head office so that we can have these sort of meetings more regularly, everyone across the group. So, but I tend to meet more with my senior executives. Yeah.
So, tell me about staying fit and exercising. So you never need your own diagnostics and your own pharmaceuticals.
Okay, so the last time you came to the office, I'm not sure, we didn't really take you around. So in Codex, we play, we work out, we play hard. We have a gym that is compulsory. Everybody must use. So from 4:30.
It's compulsory. It's compulsory.
It's
Okay.
compulsory, yes. Everybody must use. Okay, so we make sure everybody uses. There must be health checks. So sometimes, we do some in-house because of all the sort of equipment that we have. So for me, keeping fit is very important. If you want to share yourself, because we all live in an ecosystem of this earth, and your life must benefit other people. In order for your life to benefit other people, you have to have a life. Okay, and make sure that you stay healthy. So it's very important here to stay as healthy as possible. The other thing we do for mothers of infants, we have a creche in the office.
Wonderful. In the office.
So we have a creche in the office. So you don't have to worry about your little ones. So you have you have people that so they come with their help. The what do you call it? The nannies. Okay, right. So you can go downstairs, breastfeed your baby, come back to work. And so when people come to work for us here, it's like being at home.
Understood.
Okay, so you do your work and stuff. So those are the sort of things that we do to make it easier for.
That's very special. That's very special. I also want to I want to move to the next section because we have Q&A for the participants to ask you questions directly as well. So thank you so much, Sammy. That's wonderful. Team, can you just go back to the slides? I want Sammy's thoughts on our the career side as well. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So as you all are thinking about what are the different potential career pathways, there's manufacturing, quality and compliance, regulatory affairs, clinical R&D, it's all the stuff we talked about. Here are some example roles and the typical progression from entry level all the way to eventually CEO or even founder. Okay, and I want to emphasize founder. Sammy's a founder. I'm a founder. I come from a UN background, but we launched Empower School of Health because we saw a gap in individuals who wanted to learn, who wanted to know about supply chain, manufacturing, regulatory, digital health, all these areas, but didn't know where they could find an accredited, certified type of a learning material, not have to go in debt by traveling to other parts of the world, and yet have something that's accredited, certified, and they can use that to grow professionally. Next. Who's the target audience that we work with? And if you are any of these, the next generation African youth and women, and we really focus on the youth. And we're talking about a continent that has more youth than any other continent right now. 50 to 60% of the African continent is youth. And they are an incredible potential asset if we nurture them. It's just like a field. We support them appropriately, you get the fruits. You leave it untended, you see weeds in there. So this is really where we are focused a lot. In addition, there's academia and pharmaceutical sciences and existing working professionals. How do we upskill them? Next. The skills you need to know in each of these areas. I go into more detail. I won't talk about these, but the same categories: science, regulation, supply chain. Within that, I'll take one example: engineering. Okay, this is pharmaceutical manufacturing engineering, which includes pharmacists and engineers and mechanical engineers, process design, manufacturing, operations management, project management, machine operations, and lots of soft skills. All right, next. Entry level, mid-career, senior. So think about who you are, where you are today, where you want to be. All the options are available. Next. And where to find this information, depending on if you're in Africa, Asia, Europe, where can you look for all these different jobs? And there's a lot of them. This is a growing sector, like I mentioned. Next. Giving you more examples of different portals. And remember, Sammy talked about he had to go buy a magazine called The New Scientist. And there was one source, and hopefully he can get a job where others aren't able to, or he can compete better. Today, at your disposal, you have thousands of options, hundreds of options, but you should know where to hunt for this, where to look for it, and position yourself. Next. So for the audience that's here, what are the key steps? Optimize your profile, whatever you have in terms of, make sure in LinkedIn and wherever your CV, bring out the right points, get the necessary help, use AI, use your friends, use your network, use your seniors to help you optimize your profile. You absolutely need to learn new skills, get new degrees, diplomas, and accreditation. Register on these multiple platforms, and then join the necessary networks. Again, you heard from Sammy how he joined a few of the networks to understand more and then ended up where he is. Rely on Empower, really supports the academic alumni network. You're one of our graduates, you're looking for a job, you're looking for a transition. Sometimes even we've hired several of our graduates, but more than that, we always try and connect. We have a great network. We work with individuals like Sammy across multiple countries. Next. For those who are attending today, we have several courses and degrees and diploma programs. The one that's most relevant for you would be the pharmaceutical management, which includes pharmaceutical manufacturing, it includes regulatory affairs, and it includes pharmaceutical markets. And we're going to create more specializations. And with this postgraduate diploma, which takes 12 months, you stack it, there'll be a specialization, you will end up with a master's degree as well. So 12 months, another 12 months, you will have a master's, and all of this while you're working or looking for work, no need to travel, but we'll connect you. It's not just virtual. It is, you want to be able to talk to some of the leading technical experts, senior managers. We recommend which conferences you should attend. All of that is there. And you have regular access to the faculty members who are from across probably about 15 different countries that you'll have access to as well. Next. All right. So, Sammy, I'm going to ask one question, and then I'm going to open up to the participants, and I would encourage the participants to type the questions in the chat as well, so you get to read them too. What would, from your point of view, let's say we're looking at mid-management, okay? So let's say somebody in their 30s to 40s. Of course, the technical skills will vary depending on which department, division they're working. Put those aside. What soft skills, core skills, let's say just 3 of them, if you had to pick 3 core soft skills, would you say that you're looking for when you interview someone?
Okay, thank you so much. I have to say, over all these years, nearly about 18 years now of us starting Codex, I've had a chance to interview and see a lot of people. I think the first thing that comes to mind is competency. Whatever it is that someone is applying for, you want them to reasonably have the skills for that particular role that you're looking for. And then you also then look at maybe the certificates that they have, because this is just an interview. You need something to show that it's truly that they have it. When you take those 2 out, I focus a lot more on attitude. I focus a lot on how resourceful people are, how teachable they are, and also whether they have a long-term view. Because sometimes people just want money, they want quick things and stuff like that. And I try to find out more about what sort of future that they see. In our industry, and I'm sure you know this, as doing a backward integration plan, we realized there was such a disconnect between what we needed for a backward integration in terms of human capacity to what the universities are rolling out in terms of the different courses. And that's why what Empower Health is going to do and help us do in the industry will help. As I told you, I wish I'd come sooner for us than now. I think, so most of the things you're doing now, we've had to do them by ourselves. Training is extremely important. It's a very important aspect of what we do. So we try to groom from inside the people that we currently have, put them through training. If you want to work in marketing department of Codex, for example, you have to do CIM, Chartered Institute of Marketing, because I did that in the UK. And I realized how valuable that course is, and we pay for it. We either pay 50% or we pay 100%. And if you're getting into management, we put you through MBA. Again, we either pay 50% or we pay 100%. Okay? So, and for new people that we're hoping to come in, as you know, we've had to create our own faculty curriculum, working with people from outside Africa to teach and then to partner with a university, okay, to teach the basic biosensor, nanotechnology, IVD, which is just basic. So I'm really excited about the PGD program that you have, about the postgraduate diploma, so that, now we have some factories that these guys can come to see in real life what is taking place and how these things are done. And we can start to create a pool of youths. The youths in Africa are generally very inquisitive, very curious, and extremely smart. Okay, so when people say to us in Europe and say, this cannot happen in Africa, I don't buy that, because I just feel you need to have something like what Empower wants to do, you understand? And guide these youths and make them understand that it doesn't matter what course you've done, whether it's physics. So I say to people that there was a time, there was nothing like AI. Everything started with physics. So from physics to computer science to information technology, now we're talking about AI. The same thing with chemistry. Chemistry is everything. So all these courses, these youths are just found, they just need people to guide them and then to show them the way you've just done today, the possibilities that there's so many things that you can do. So when we started, not a lot of QMS people, we didn't have people with experience of WHO of any product. Okay? We didn't have a lot of experience. I mean, we're talking about medical devices, IVDs. We weren't even doing enough for drugs, chocolates or medical devices, when at some point in Nigeria, there was not a single medical device company that has ISO 3485. Okay, so there's so much that we look for, but for me, attitude is
I mean, just on that. Okay, so 5 things you mentioned, and then I want to pick up on some of the questions that have come through. Number 1, you said competency, and that's part of what these webinars are about, what Empower, the CEOs industry is about. Attitude, absolutely. Resourcefulness, teachability, that means they're always learning and they're thinking long-term. They're not just thinking for the moment. It's not just about what's in it for me today, but what is it in it for me in the long term and for my employer as well. So one question you just touched on, one point you touched on, and the question comes is, with regards to medical devices and IVD, what would you advise regulators to ensure these IVDs meet specific quality requirements that are important for Nigeria? Because like you said, this is a new area. And if I remember correctly, more than half the regulatory authorities in Africa do not regulate devices.
Okay, so yeah.
And we can keep it a little bit brief because then I've got a few other questions. Go ahead. And I know it's really a question for the regulators, but what would you advise the regulators?
I think for us in Nigeria, I would say that we're very lucky. What do I mean by that? Because you have a DG of NAFDAC, we're so passionate and driven about all these things we're talking about. As a matter of fact, some of the steps that we've taken have been encouraged by her, to say, Sammy, I know you've been talking about this backward integration. Why don't you just go ahead? And then the NAFDAC is also very honest about the limitations that they had at the time. And so they were saying, we can't even regulate unless there's somebody manufacturing. You understand? So we cannot support unless there's someone that's an entrepreneur, industrialist that want to do it. So we've been working very closely with NAFDAC. And now NAFDAC is leading. Now, very soon, NAFDAC will also be able to carry out some of the functions that are done by WHO around WHOPQ. So a lot of things have changed in Nigeria. So NAFDAC is not just looking at drugs alone. As a matter of fact, there is now a new directorate set up in NAFDAC for medical devices. We never had that before. So I would say we're very lucky, but I'm not sure whether every other country is doing that. But we're making a lot of progress in Nigeria, yes.
The DG of NAFDAC is really proactive, and she is one of the, in fact, for when we talk about maturity level 3, there's only 9 out of 55 countries that have maturity level 3 at the regulatory authority level. Nigeria is, of course, one of the leading countries there. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll go back to Daniel and the poll for the rest of the students. I know there's many more questions. And Sammy, I'll give you the opportunity to maybe by email respond to some of them. We'll share some information as well. Okay. And please let me know if you would like us to share your email ID or your assistant's email ID with the audience. We don't want to flood your inbox. That would not be good. So that otherwise your 80 emails by 8 a.m. will become 200. All right. So, but let us know how they might be able to reach you if they wanted to do that. One of the questions: how would you involve youth in the future is youth? And let's assume these are youth who are just graduating from, let's say, a bachelor's degree, whether it's pharmacy, engineering, management. And so they would be about 21, 22 years old. Or a master's degree, they could be 22, 23. How you talked about how you support mothers, how you support, make sure everyone is exercising. How would you support youth in, and this is your example, but this could be applied then across as well, please.
Okay, so one of the things that we do, as you know, we have the Codex Academy. This is for the youth that we're hoping to bring in to our company. Okay, so we have Codex Academy. We have we support medical lab scientists in the training of medical lab science students or people that are graduated from medical lab science. We have the course that we've started at the university to have people come in for to take some new courses in biosensor and nanotechnology. But when we're in the company, we in fact before that we partner with a lot of universities now for CWES. So we bring the youths to the factory to come and see. Some of them stay with us for 3 months, some stay for 6 months. Wow. We also we take a lot of, I think within the group, we probably have at least about 10 to 20 CWES students at every point in time. We pay them. When I did my CWES, I had to pay the company to pay me in Nigeria. Wow. But in my company, we pay them, there are so many other things, benefits that we give them. And then for youth service, we also take a lot of students for youth service and we have to train them. We take them through different departments as, when they come in as youth corpers. We take them through different departments so that they can see, so we can have them working in the technical department, in marketing, in commercial, in the QA, QCs, different departments. So that by the time they finally finish their service, they have regulatory, so they have an idea of places that they can go and work, okay? And we also now take intakes, like new graduates, okay? During the, so we do induction program. There's some quick ones that you do for about 2 or 3 weeks. You then have one that takes almost about a year, so that you get to run through different departments and then settle for which one that you have the most interest in. Okay, so those are some of the things we do.
You know what this reminds me of is is my experience. So I graduated from pharmacy school. My undergrad was in the United States, and the way they gave us the internship experience, they rotated us. I did the same thing in Japan, and again, they rotated us, which was wonderful. And that's a real investment by the company because they're not learning. They're actually, it costs them more time, more effort. The individuals are now focusing on the individual, not on the work. But that's the investment that the company makes, and it allows them to help identify the leaders of the youth, and also it helps the youth learn so many new skills. Fantastic. Sammy, I want to congratulate you and Codex for all the amazing stuff that you guys have done. And now with this, hearing what you spoke today, I'm even more excited for our partnership. And I'm so glad that UNITAR is also here. I mean, UNITAR, first of all, they have like 400,000 followers on their different social media pages, the work that they do across. They're more than 60 years old in terms of their brand, their work, their support. And they've got partner offices in more than 30 to 40 countries. So, Sammy, thank you very much. Daniel, thank you very much for co-hosting this with us. And with that, I give you the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. And of course, thank you, Sammy, for these extremely insightful and valuable contributions that you've given us. I think that all of us, including myself, come out of this webinar inspired, and hopefully that will translate into us engaging deeper with our audience within the framework of the joint courses that Empower School of Health and UNITAR provide. I'd like to, just as a refresher, remind everyone that Empower School of Health, in collaboration with UNITAR, does offer a course in pharmaceutical management, and the link for that has been shared in the chat. So before we conclude today's session, we'll be closing off with a brief poll, similar to the one that we did in the beginning of the session. So do please take a minute or so to answer the questions that you see on your screen.
And while you're doing that, I would request Daniel and team to, we didn't get the chance to see the responses. So before we hang up, if we could leave the responses on and share with the audience, that would be great too.
All right, so as responses are slowly starting to trickle in, I will start reading some of the results. We're at about 15% answer rate. Well, so far, 50% of you have said that you have a very clear understanding after this webinar of how you'd rate your understanding of pharmaceutical value chain. So between very clear understanding and good understanding, we're almost at 95%. So congratulations once again to both of our speakers. According to our audience, what stood out most from the leadership journey shared, 43% of you say resilience and humble beginnings, 40% of you say operational discipline, and at 35%, we have strategic thinking and people-centered leadership at a tie. When it comes to the question of, after hearing from industry leaders, what do you believe is most critical for career growth? The main answer, the vast majority of you at 60% say that it's strong technical knowledge, whereas 46% of you say continuous learning and upskilling. When it comes to the area which you will prioritize after today's session, exactly half of you say supply chain management, 40% of you say quality systems and GMP, and a quarter of you are saying communication skills and data analytics and digital tools. Whether our audience would consider structured training in pharmaceutical management to advance their careers, quite encouraging figures here. 80% of you are saying yes, definitely. And in terms of how valuable this webinar was for your professional development, we are at over 96%, extremely valuable and very valuable. So once again, not surprising, but still very pleasant to hear. So thank you, Professor Lalvani. and Mr. Okunjimi for this. How would you rate the overall quality of the content and speakers? Here we have 0% at anything that's negative or indifference. So excellent is at 72%, good at 27%. And finally, are you interested in pursuing a PhD or master's degree in any of the following areas? 37% of you are saying pharmaceutical marketing and management, and 15% of you are saying pharmaceutical manufacturing. So once again, as a reminder, we have the link for our joint courses available in the chat. Otherwise, do feel free to send us an email. I believe our email addresses are also shared in the chat. Last question, which of the pharmaceutical ecosystems interests you the most? Here, the answers are quite scattered, but around a third of you say supply chain and distribution, and 20% of you say drug discovery, research and development, and clinical trials tied with leadership and management. So we'll be ending here with 61% of you having answered. I'll be sharing the results here, which you should be able to see on your screen. As you can see, the results have been quite positive. So I thank all of you, especially our speakers, for your extremely valuable insights, and also our dear participants for their contributions and their insightful questions. We hope to see all of you next month for our next webinar.
Right.
But most importantly, we very much hope to welcome you in our courses. Back to you, Paul.
Yeah, Daniel, sorry, just one thing to add. So looking at the responses, first of all, this is the highest score that we've received for and coming for you. So Sammy, this is really for you. I mean, Daniel and I are just, the moderators in a way, but your content, what you shared, and perfectly put, from humble beginnings to leadership, fantastic. And we'll do more of these of individuals from different parts of the world. UNITAR and Daniel is going to bring ambassadors and other country leaders as well to invite. So really, it's a range of leadership to expose to our audience. And interestingly, you also mentioned supply chain is quite high on many of these. We didn't highlight our courses on supply chain, both short and long, and a postgraduate diploma all the way to a master's. So if you're interested in that, that's also available. We'll put this in the chat, but it's also on our website. So regulatory, manufacturing, marketing, supply chain, we are there to get you ready for industry, get a job, and grow in the sector as well. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
All the best.